Welcome to the Anunnaki, Chapter 1, The Origins of a Mystery. Today we are cutting right through the noise to explore one of history's absolutely oldest, most captivating, and honestly most controversial mysteries, the true origins of humanity's earliest gods. So let's just trace this all the way back to where it began.
When we think of ancient history, our minds usually default right to the great Egyptian pyramids rising up from the sand, or maybe the vast Roman Empire stretching across continents. But to find the Anunnaki, we have to go back way, way further. Long before those empires were even a thought.
We're traveling back to a world that was wild, completely untamed, and long before the very first emperor ever put on a crown. The whole concept of an organized society, that didn't even exist yet. Everyday survival was just a brutal daily struggle against unpredictable floods, shifting seasons, and some pretty devastating droughts.
But out of that immense struggle for survival emerged Mesopotamia, the land nestled right between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And this wasn't just another settlement, this was the crucible. It's where cities first rose from the earth and where the concept of writing was quite literally born, giving humanity a permanent memory for the very first time.
Number 1. The birth of civilization.
So how exactly did we get from these scattered, struggling farming communities to the absolute center of the ancient universe? Well, in those fertile lands between the rivers, a totally remarkable chain reaction kicked off. A food surplus led to growing towns, and those rapidly evolved into enormous temple cities. Suddenly, you had specialized craftsmen, new rulers stepping up to govern exploding populations, and these massive, towering, sun-dried mud brick structures just dominating the skyline.
Just picture the city of Uruk. Its towering temple was visible for miles across the flat plains. You had thousands living within its walls, right in the middle of buzzing markets and these incredibly complex canal networks moving trade, things like grain, pottery, precious stones, and everyday people felt a profound, literal connection to the divine in every single storm, harvest, and disaster, with priests constantly climbing those massive temple staircases to perform sacred rituals.
Number 2. Okay, let's dive right into this. Who were the Anunnaki?
To the people of Uruk, the universe wasn't just random chaos. It was governed by powerful supernatural beings. The word Anunnaki actually translates to the offspring of Anu, Anu being the supreme sky god. They were basically the ultimate VIPs of the ancient world, a group of major deities directly tied to maintaining the divine order of the entire cosmos. And as you might guess, over thousands of years, their specific roles kind of shifted and evolved as Sumerian beliefs gradually blended into Akkadian, Babylonian, and eventually Assyrian traditions. But here's the crucial thing. They were not all-powerful solo creators like we see in later monotheistic religions. Instead, they formed a divine assembly. Think of it almost like a cosmic board of directors. One god governed the heavens, another watched over the fresh water, while others were in charge of storms or love, fertility, and even war. They really operated together as a collective just to keep order in both heaven and earth.
And the main takeaway here is summed up perfectly by this idea. To ancient Mesopotamians, this was absolutely not mythology. It was reality. When they looked up at the sky or felt the rain on their skin, they literally believed they were experiencing the direct actions of the Anunnaki. It was an unquestioned, ever-present reality of their day-to-day lives.
Number 3. Lost to the sands. And number 4. The cuneiform discovery.
And this brilliantly illustrates how history is rarely permanent. The sheer scale of the silence that followed is just staggering. Look at this. Uruk is thriving around 3000 BCE, but by 500 BCE, the ancient languages are already fading away. Then you fast forward, through the rise and fall of Rome, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, empires literally fell, temples crumbled into absolute dust, and humanity entirely forgot its earliest written stories. It wasn't until the 1800s in Iraq that archaeologists started uncovering libraries buried deep beneath the earth, breaking millennia of absolute silence.
And what they found down there were thousands upon thousands of clay tablets covered in what we now call cuneiform. It is one of the oldest known forms of writing on the planet, utilizing these tiny wedge-shaped markings. When scholars finally cracked the code and learned to decipher this lost script, it was honestly like a time machine. The voices of people who had lived over 4,000 years earlier could suddenly be heard again. Kings recording victories, merchants tracking their business deals, and priests preserving these beautiful sacred hymns.
Not to mention scribes carefully copying down stories that had already been ancient in their own time. And from that translated dust, these powerful figures re-emerged onto the world stage: Anu, Enlil, Enki, Inanna, and Ninhursag. Just like that, the Anunnaki had been found, completely reclaiming their throne right at the center of humanity's oldest religious traditions.
Which brings us to number 5, gods or ancient aliens. Now, as these ancient texts hit the mainstream, they didn't just attract historians and archaeologists, they completely captured the internet's imagination. You see, on one hand, the historical texts clearly describe deities of a divine cosmic order, the offspring of Anu, keeping nature and civilization in check. But on the other hand, you've got these explosive modern claims, arguing that the Anunnaki were not gods at all. Instead, they were ancient astronauts, advanced visitors from another world, and literally the creators of humanity itself. It has become a massive modern phenomenon, entirely fueled by endless documentaries, books, and online debates.
So our job in this explainer is pretty clear. We are separating the actual evidence from the speculation. How much of these extraordinary modern claims is actually supported by the physical clay tablets pulled from the sands of Iraq, and how much is just purely modern interpretation? We're going to explore exactly what the oldest surviving texts truly say, meet the gods who ruled the Sumerian imagination, and trace how these myths survived for millennia to become one of today's most controversial historical mysteries.
Because honestly, sometimes the real historical story is even more extraordinary than the legends. I want to leave you with this question to ponder as we wrap up this first chapter. When we look at the Anunnaki, are we looking at ancient gods born from the incredible imagination of humanity's very first civilization? Or are we looking at something else entirely? Think about that for a bit.